Welcome. This is Samantha Skelly, and you are listening to the Hungry for Happiness podcast, where we dig deep and discover how to reconnect into your body, heal your relationship to food, and finally feel the liberation and freedom you desire. Kleenex is encouraged, and pants are optional. What's up, Phoenixes, and welcome back to the Hungry for Happiness podcast. You are listening to episode 002 with Elizabeth DiAlto. I absolutely loved this conversation. We dug into the importance of boundaries, creating boundaries in your life, and what it's costing you to not have boundaries in your life. Elizabeth says a woman is not just a lovelier version of a man, and we really dig into what that means and how to really hone and harness your feminine power. Elizabeth is the creator of Wild Soul Movement. Her mission is to build community, curate conversations, and create content, events, and experiences that turn your relationship with yourself into one of the most wild, passionate love affairs of your lifetime. I hope you enjoy this episode. What's up, Phoenixes, and welcome back to the Hungry for Happiness podcast. I am so freaking excited right now because my soul sister, P.S., there's going to be lots of giggles on this podcast, so turn your volume down right now.
Do yourself a favor.
My soul sister, Elizabeth DiAlto, is joining us today, and not only do I love this girl for the work that she does in the world, for those of you who know her stuff, it is incredible. She is one of the most soul-centered, just no bullshit women I have ever met in my entire life, and she's one of my closest friends in the entire world. So I am so grateful you're here. Thanks, girl.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. So first question we ask all our guests is, what is the number one thing about life that makes you feel most alive?
Being in a woman's body.
Tell me more.
So this ties a lot into the work that I do, but really engaging with all of my senses, and not just like the physical senses, but like the intuition, the inner knowing is what makes me feel more alive, because that's how I actually experience every single moment of life.
I love
through
it.
My physical body. Like everything beyond my body is communicating with me through my body. So if it's happening, if it's alive in my surroundings or in my experience, I'm having that experience because I'm in a body.
Okay, I love this. And how old were you? What was the turning point for you to actually appreciate this and feel this essence of being able to sense these things and feel these things and have this awareness of how much of a gift it is to be in a woman's body?
So here's what's really interesting. When I look back, there was always like an appreciation and an enjoyment for being in a body, but not like any kind of conscious or mental acknowledgement of that. In fact, it was more like, oh, it's wrong, be careful, it's dangerous. I was raised a religious upbringing. I started growing breasts in the 3rd grade. Like my body looked sexual by the time I was like in the 5th grade, you know? But I always dug having a body, you know, being able to do cool things. I played sports growing up. I started masturbating when I was like 10, and I was like, oh, that feels good, you know? I don't know if things just move a little faster on the East Coast, but like I had my first kiss, and I started like, you know, being physical with boys when I was 11. So there was a lot of excitement and curiosity around being in the body. And because I worked out a lot, I often experienced like power and strength in the body. And then I started dancing, salsa dancing in my mid-20s. And there was some real, and salsa enabled me to be able to dance without being drunk.
Love that.
And so like the physical expression and like being in a body and the sensuality and allowing a man to lead me. So I would say the conscious turning point was in my mid-20s, but there was always some base level like appreciation for like my physical being.
This is beautiful. I appreciate your appreciation. I can remember maybe about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, you and I were at the beach and we were surfing, or we were trying to surf. And I remember
I wouldn't really call that surfing. But
I was going to say, I use the word surfing very, very, very loosely. But but I remember you saying, like, I love how cute my butt looks, or I love how bodacious, whatever you said. You were lying on your surfboard and you like turned over your shoulder and you saw your ass. And you mentioned something like, it was a moment for me. I was just thinking, like, that is such a friggin' beautiful thing, that a woman can absolutely appreciate her body and actually vocalize it to another woman without worrying about being threatened. Do you know what I mean? It was just like this really, really friggin' cool moment where I was like, you go, girl. Like, I love that about you. I really do. And it's just a testament to your work as well. You do this. You help women get embodied, feel feminine, all of this kind of stuff, which we're going to get into in this show. But it was a moment where I was like, fucking hell. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Totally.
So today today I want to talk about the Hungry for Happiness community. You know, the word trust comes up and everyone like shudders and they're like, oh God, I don't trust myself. Why? Because they had a 20, 30, 40 year career in dieting and they just absolutely don't trust themselves at all when it pertains to food and where you are, there you go. So if you don't trust yourself heavily in the realm of food, then you probably don't trust yourself to any degree with money, relationships, and things like that. And so I would love to just really open this up and chat to you about it, because it's your ninja. It's what you teach your women. When we don't trust ourselves at all and there's zero trust, how can we begin to develop, because we need evidence, right? When we take action, we get evidence, then we're like, oh, I trust myself there, so now I can do this next thing. Where do we start? How do we open up that conversation with ourselves?
Yeah. So the confidence comes from evidence thing is huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what's great is taking some time to actually reflect backwards first and go, there are times when you did actually trust yourself because for whatever reason you were distracted enough that you were just kind of like went with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And you just like grab what you wanted. A lot of people have this experience actually on vacation because there's like this vacation mindset where you're like, whatever, I'm on vacation. But that permission provides the trust. It's like, I'm on vacation, right? And so it's almost like bringing that vacation mentality into your life and being like, I'm living my life. This is a day-to-day thing, right?
Yeah.
So the evidence of the times when you trusted yourself and you were fine. And maybe it wasn't that you trusted yourself, but you were going with the flow in some way, whereas you normally wouldn't. And if you think back on it, you can notice that like the world didn't come crumbling down. You didn't gain weight. You didn't have a stomach ache. Like because you weren't in your head about it, you were really just like present. It was fine. And realize, so based on the result or the outcome, you go, I can actually trust myself to be in flow with things and to be like a little more lax about things. And not everything is the biggest deal in the world. All these, because the opposite of trust is control.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of your women, their behaviors with food and body, it's all about control. And we only try to control everything because we don't trust that if we stop, it's going to be okay. That the wheels aren't going to come falling off the cart. You know?
Absolutely.
So first, reflecting back on times when you like inadvertently trusted yourself or were in some kind of flow and things were fine as evidence that that's okay to do. And then realizing what are all the places and spaces where you're trying to control or manipulate everything so much. That's where you need some trust. And like there needs to be, it's never going to be, I don't really believe in the word balance, but like a better harmony, like a better flow, a better dance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really about finding the areas or the situations in your life where you do trust yourself and then resourcing those emotions into an area where you don't trust yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because there's a lot of women who, for whatever reason, and actually it's not whatever reason, the reason is practice and consistency.
Yeah.
There's plenty of women who are like badass in their career or as a mom at home around the house with the family or whatever, and they don't second guess themselves, right? Because it's another symptom of I don't trust myself is the constant second guessing. And second guessing usually precedes reaching outside of myself, putting my authority in, this magazine, this article, this thing. There's nothing wrong with experimenting to see what you can trust, but to see what has shifted, right?
Yeah. Yeah. that is one thing I'll say about you. And I see this with you all the time is you do not, I feel from my experience of you, I never see you putting your authority in something else or being dependent on anyone else or anything else. And so I would love to just dig into this with you. What is the belief system that you need to have in order for you not to do that? Because I can imagine that alleviates a lot of stress, a lot of negotiation with the mind, a lot of control, a lot of like doubt. And for women who are don't have this, that's a stressful thing. It's like their mind is always on overdrive, asking everyone and their dog what they should do. So what is the underlying belief that you have to believe or you get to believe in order to not be so dependent on anything else?
There's a couple components to it. One is I don't do regret and I don't believe in mistakes. So if I made a choice, it's always the right choice.
Yeah.
Even if it creates an unpleasant or undesirable situation, it was correct because I'm sure I got something out of that situation. So for example, I've done who knows how many podcast interviews over the last several years. Sometimes people will ask you, what advice would you go back and give like your 20-something-year-old self or your teenage self? My answer is always nothing. I would tell her to keep going. She's doing fine. Because if I changed anything in my trajectory, I might not be like right here, right now. And
That's
I
beautiful.
love right here, right now. You know what I mean?
I love it. I got goosebumps.
So you're always going to make the right choice. Or to put it in another way, is your podcast explicit? Can I say an F word?
You can say an F word.
Okay, great. You can't fuck it up. You can't. You cannot mess it up. You can only gather information, valuable information. So no mistakes is number one. The second part of it is, the practice. And I know this was actually fun. You were at my house doing a podcast interview. I think it was with JJ Virgin. And you were talking about like the yes, no practice, like using your body as a compass to be able to discern what feels like yes in my body, what feels like no in my body. And then for me, I also incorporate what feels like truth. Because when you know what truth feels like, you can tell when you're lying to yourself.
Yes.
And when you know what yes feels like, you can make these decisions. You could formulate your questions into, yes or no question after yes or no question until you arrive at the answer. And so I run things through my body, and then my practice is really I do not ship it back up to my mind to analyze it. I just don't. So I'll give you a great example. I'm in Hawaii right now. And last time I came here, I posted on Instagram that I was coming. This woman who follows me was just like, hey, do you want to swim with dolphins? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do more than anything in the world. So I met this woman last time. We went snorkeling. And when I came back this time, she took me the other day and we went with dolphins, like straight up in Kealakekua Bay. That may or may not be how you say it. And Captain Cook here on the Big Island. And then, I went back the other morning by myself. Now, there were people around, and I also had a paddleboard with me. So I could have paddleboarded or I could have snorkeled. And I'm looking at the water, but I hadn't been to this place, though. So I have no idea what's going on below the surface. I don't know where the rocks are. I don't know where the coral is. I don't know what swims around here. And I'm like, So I did my little body check, and I was like, should I swim here by myself today? And I got a no. Should I paddle here? And I got to know because the water was a little bit of rough. There was a little bit of a break. And again, I don't know what's going on because I don't know the terrain. So I was there. It was a 40-minute drive from where I'm staying. And old me probably would have been like, you came all the way here. You'll be fine. But me, this version of me that trusts my body above all else. Yeah. I don't put myself in danger anymore. Whether that's physical or financial or all the other relational, all the types of danger I used to put myself in on a fairly regular basis, I've graduated from having to learn things the hard way because I trust now. My body said no, and I was like, all right, trust it. Then I ended up going back later in the day. My friend Lisa came to meet me. We had an amazing swim, and I was so glad because there were tons of nuances and things that I wouldn't have known. And it was good to have someone experienced, Yeah.
I love that. And it's interesting because with you, it's like full stop, yes or no. And so I know, and this is another beautiful thing as well. I know when you and I are together, you want to be there. You absolutely want to be there. It's like that level of like discernment is higher than most, which is such a beautiful thing. And that comes through trusting, feeling out the yeses and no in your body. So for a lot of people listening, when we're talking about this visceral yes and no in the body, you might be thinking, I don't even know what that feels like. I feel completely numb to my body because for so long it's not been a safe space. Yeah. How can we begin to understand it's safe to be in our body. It's safe to feel things, because a lot of times there's like a very negative association to simply just being and feeling. And so our safety places up in our head. Like we feel safe in our head. It's never let us down. So we think, and it's completely shifted. Whereas our body is the dangerous place. And that's what our mind has decided. Yeah. So how do we begin to, de-school those ideas that the body is unsafe?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you need to understand that your mind is actually not super safe. Mm-hmm. It's just what you've been doing. And so there's a familiarity, there's consistency, and there's practice and training and conditioning to back that up. So the journey into trusting the body, you need to understand in the beginning, it's going to be like learning any type of new skill, right? Like if you're learning to ride a bicycle, shit's going to be wobbly at first. You're going to fall over. Mm-hmm. But again, it's not a mistake, because like I said earlier, if you fall off the bike, you realize, oh, I fell because I did this. Now I know not to do that. So we've spent our entire lives relying on our minds because we have not learned anything else. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of allowing yourself to enter into learning a new process. Mm-hmm. And again, testing it out, trial and error. So committing to yourself to just check in, right? You still might pop up back into your head, but like always just check into the body. And a lot of it is about presence. There's a couple really easy things. Just breathe. When you breathe and notice that you are breathing, you notice that you have a body. Mm-hmm. That's it. Notice where the breath goes. Does it go into your chest? Can you send it all the way down into your belly? So breathing, number one, easiest thing in the world. Slowing down. In Wild Soul Movement, we use sensual movement. And the reason why is because, and again, it's sensual, not sexual, right? Although people get super turned on sometimes. I've had women tell me after Wild Soul Movement, I feel like I just had like super hot sex with myself. And I didn't touch my vagina in any way. Because you get really turned on. You get into your body. You activate your body. You turn on your senses. You simply notice that you have them. So even things like putting a hand somewhere on your body and noticing, what does it feel like where your hand is touching your leg or where your hand is touching your heart? Notice that contact. Physical touch, by the way, is one of the most natural things we do as humans. Like if you bang your knee into the coffee table, the first thing, like instinctually, you're going to rub it. Yeah. So your body already knows. That's the other thing that you can use your mind to cognitively understand. Your body knows. Your body is so wise. Like your body knows how to heal itself. You don't have to tell your body to breathe. You don't have to tell your heart to beat and pump the blood. You don't have to tell your cuts how to heal when you scratch yourself. Like your body's a genius. If you're a woman who's had a baby, your body knew how to make a human.
Yeah, that's
for the
insane.
love of God. So like you need to acknowledge, you need to find proof that like the body is super, super wise, right? The mind is just basing things on what it can perceive or what it knows. And there's a lot of things you don't know. We don't even know we don't know. Like every time you read a book or listen to a podcast or hear someone say something and you have one of those aha moments, like think of how many times that's happened to you. That's how much your friggin' conscious mind doesn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really what I love now about just like living from a place of intuition and allowing my body to make decisions. And then my mind check in afterwards is like, oh, this is the right decision. Let me find out why, oh, I'm being guided here. Like for me, this move down to San Diego, it was my body was like, you need to be there. This feels really good and expansive and open. The thought of being in Vancouver and staying there felt like contracted and horrible. And so I was like, okay, whatever, let's do this. And because of this move, everything is unfolding and I'm understanding why at such a deep level, why this was the right decision. And that can be on a micro level as well. It could be little tiny things throughout my day. Like, let me check in. Okay. I don't know why I'm doing that, but let's just do it with full faith, knowing that my body has my back. And then let's figure out why after. So the evidence doesn't have to be there before we actually take the action, which is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
It'll often come later, and it'll also come in like massive layers later. You'll be like, oh, damn, that's why. Yeah. But just get in the practice of, if this is what my body says, I'm going to listen, and then I'll reflect later. But I'm just not going to talk myself out of it. And here's why. If you do want to actually use your intellect to analyze this, practice this for 2 weeks, just checking in with your body and noticing the outcome of doing so, right? And also notice, if you think you're not getting signals from your body, it's because you're thinking. It's because your mind is not recognized. I'll give you a good example. I was walking my mom through the yes-no body practice a couple weeks ago about a decision. And I'm like, okay, Mom, now what do you feel and where do you feel it? And she goes, in my head.
I feel it.
She's like, oh, I can't get all these thoughts to quiet down. I'm like, cool, let's just do it again. And the second time she was like, okay, I feel this here. I forget where exactly she said.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, just try it a couple times. Again, like you're very used to popping up into your mind and overanalyzing things. So that will be your default setting. So you're just retraining yourself, which just takes some effort. So the only willingness you need to have is to be able to put in the effort. And the incentive for the willingness is like all the miraculous results. Like Sam and I's stories here, like let this motivate you. You probably have your own too. Even in your Facebook group, women probably share things all the time. Like I checked in, or everyone has had this experience where you've gone somewhere and you got a funny feeling and you're like, I can't stay here. Or you met someone and you're like, this person, it feels funky. Yeah. That's discernment.
Yeah.
And so trusting your body is about discernment. It's not judgment. And for those of you who are into like personal development and self-help and like, I don't want to be judgmental or I'm trying to be compassionate, great. But understand the difference, right? Judgment places value on things. Judgment goes, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad.
Yes.
I'm better than or worse than, or this person's better than me or blah, blah, blah. Very comparative analysis type stuff. Discernment is just saying this is for me or it's not for me.
Yeah.
There's no value. It's not making anything right or wrong. It's just going, this is for me, it's not. Like Sam and I joke a lot. You know, Sam's like happy place is this like North County, San Diego, where I currently live as well. And like, I'm moving. I can't wait to get out. This is not my happy place. Like we joke around all the time how for me, there's so many times we'll go to something. I'll be like, I gotta go.
I gotta go. See you later.
I'm gonna last about 10 minutes and then I got a piece. And again, if there's something wrong with the place, there's something wrong with the people, it is just not my vibe.
And then when she's in Malibu, she feels like $1 million.
Damn, everything opens up.
I want to go back to something you said, which I think is really powerful. And I know this is a practice in Wild Soul movement, but this whole sensual versus sexual thing and how we can be sensual with ourselves. I think that's a concept my women just don't understand at all, or have never practiced what that actually feels like in their body. And it is such a gift to be able to have like that time where you allow yourself to feel so embodied and sensual within yourself. So if you could just touch on this and explain the difference, that would be epic.
And this is important to specifically address a question you asked earlier. It's how do we feel safe in our bodies and safe to trust our bodies? You got to look at the reason why people don't, first of all. Why don't women feel safe in their bodies? Because a lot of you listening have had experiences where your body was violated by you or someone else, right? Whether that was an assault or a trauma or a sexual experience, whether you were an adult or a child, or whether it was your own self by whatever violent behaviors that you've done on your own self for whatever reason. I have so much love for that because women in my community have that all the time. So having a slow and safe and intimate practice of just paying attention and giving yourself touch and care and slow movement that allows you to notice what you feel and where you feel it and like what your body is telling you. Like I've recently dubbed this your embody language. It's your body's unique language of the senses. Sam and I could sit here and tell you what various things feel like in our own bodies, and it may or may not be accurate for you. So again, it's an evolving process and a practice to be with yourself. And there will be days where it will be easier to be with yourself. There will be days when you're like triggered or something's going on, or depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle, if you menstruate, or depending on what's going on in the cosmos, if you follow astrology or the moon or whatever, like there's other energies at play, you know, relationships, what's going on in your household or your family or at your job that might impact how safe you might feel. If your fight or flight response is getting triggered, it's not going to be as easy to be present and to be in your body. So having a sensual practice with your body, whether it's simply taking the time when you're in the shower to like, don't use a sponge, use your hands to like soap your body and feel your body, or put on lotion or coconut oil or something. When you get out of the shower, give yourself a massage, even if it's something like tapping or shaking out, just like literally the practice of noticing what do you feel and where do you feel it, and that your body has all kinds of sensations and they're firing all day based on where you are, who you're with, what you're talking about, what you're reading, the information. Like, notice how you feel when you're scrolling through Facebook. So you just become more present to and attuned to your body, which therefore, once you speak the language, and if anyone's ever traveled, this is the same thing. When you go to a foreign country and you don't necessarily speak the language, and you know it's dead obvious that you're not from there, it feels a little unsafe, even when you're asking people for help, because you know they could be messing with you for one reason or another.
Sure.
So it's like, if you don't have any reason or experience to trust your body, so if you're venturing into connecting to your body and you're learning your embodied language, how to speak your own body's unique language of the senses, but you're not fluent yet, you're going to feel unsafe because you're in new territory, you're on new land, you know? So, but what do you do when you travel? You get a phrase book. You use Google Translate. You ask some people, what does this mean? How do I say that? You get a couple phrases under your belt. You listen to a podcast or something. You pick up on the accent. You learn how to say some stuff, and you feel safer. You might not necessarily feel like you belong yet, or like you're a native or a local, but you'll feel safer and more comfortable. And the same will happen with your body as you spend more time getting to know the language. Make sense?
I love that. I love the piece that you said. Don't just do what you and I do and just try and make that your own. Go explore what it is that and how your body speaks to you. Yeah. And we do this through, like, just make an intention to listen. You know, just by being open and listening, it's not like, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. It's like, today, I'm going to be open to the understanding, the profound knowing that my body is actually speaking to me right now. And I'm just going to listen and be open to it.
And listen, you have to do it every day. Like, pick 1 or 2 days a week to get started. And then it becomes like these phases of learning, right? Like, some of you listening just went from the unconscious incompetence. You didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah.
And then we just told you something, and now you know that, like, oh, my body's speaking to me all the time. And as you begin to practice this, you're going to be in like the conscious competence. I know what I know now, so I'm practicing it. Doesn't mean you'll remember all the time.
Yeah.
So, and then once you get deeper, some of you might already have this practice, you'll begin to notice the difference between impulse and intuition. Impulse is that like initial gut hit, which is not always the wisest information from your body. It's intel. But to actually pause and tune in and go, cool, what is this pointing me in the direction of to get to the actual intuition? That's important. And they might feel different in your body. They might not. But, you know, I interviewed, do you know Elliot Hulses?
No.
It's like YouTube fitness superstar guy who's gotten more into like conscious teachings and guiding men more recently. And I had him on the podcast recently, and he was saying that for him, he feels like instinct or impulse is in his balls, right? He's even on my podcast. He's like, I'm grabbing my balls right now. I'm like, thanks for letting me know. He's like, my intuition is in my heart. And judgment happens in my mind. And I'm like, it's such a simple roadmap. So for us women, like really, like, your instincts, your impulse might be in your gut or your womb space. Intuition might happen in the heart, and judgment for sure happens in the mind. You'll notice the body doesn't judge. It's the mind that judges, because the body can't evaluate things. The body really only goes, yes, no, that feels good. That doesn't feel good. Right.
And it just responds. Yeah.
What all of this has in common, though, as some of you probably have picked up on already, it requires slowing down. And it requires some patience. And so some of you will just be like, well, I'm in a hurry. I have things to do, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't. And I used to be that person. So I want to speak directly to those of you who think that slowing down is going to interfere with your productivity or making things happen or getting things done. I want to tell you that either way, you're going to spend the time. If you're rushing through, not checking in with yourself, you're going to oversee things, and you're going to create more circumstances that you're going to have to clean up later. And many of you with food can relate to this. If you know you have a sensitivity, or you know this certain thing doesn't make you feel good, and you're like, fuck it, I'm upset. And you do the emotional eating, and you pay for it later.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. This whole time scarcity thing, like, I'm just going to power through and get through and not listen and go because I don't have enough time. I love that you just touched on this, because this is a concept that people, you know, they're like, I don't want to do this, like, slowing down, checking in with my body thing, because I don't have enough time for that. Time scarcity in general is a huge belief that people have. in this
Yeah.
community.
And again, like you're spending the time either way. So you can either spend it up front intentionally and just have a better outcome, or you can spend it on the back end cleaning up from when you didn't.
I can look back at my life and just really see this, like, oh my God, because I can't, and I know this about myself. It's it's something I need to be aware of. I can be a very impulsive person.
Me too.
You know, it's like, okay, go. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I always thought, I was like, no, that's just my intuition. You know, I feel it and I just do it. It's like, well, not really. We need to, like, the intuition responds when we slow down, when we quiet down the mind and we just listen. We're open to it coming to us, right? That hit and that action right away is very like, it's very jerky. It's very masculine. And so I love how you differentiated this, because it's very important, because I know there's a lot of people listening who are like you and I, can be very impulsive, but knowing that that's your tendency and understanding that the intuition speaks after the initial like hit, after the initial like shot of espresso, that's when you can really feel for the answers.
And listen, there's a place for it, the instinct and the impulse. Like that's what saves us as humans. That's what, like, we don't get hit by a car, or we turn the wheel real quick so we don't hit a person, or like, you know, whatever it is, there's a place for it. But in like the day-to-day, the important decisions, even the micro important decisions, what should I eat for breakfast? Like, what time should I go to bed? Like, should I go do this thing or not? It makes sense to slow down and do the check-in. So you make a really good, because I mean, then you disappoint fewer people. Here's what I've found. When I was living primarily from impulse, I would be canceling, quitting, and backing out of shit all the time. And I didn't want to be an unreliable person. But once I committed to honoring myself, and I would realize I was in a place and I'm like, damn, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to be here. I'm like, now I have no choice because I know better. So I have to back out, or I have to quit, or I have to cancel. I'd rather take the time up front so I can be less, it's not flaky, but just, I'm going to honor myself either way. That's part of the trust, right?
Yeah.
The highest form of integrity is honoring yourself, not finish what you start. Sometimes finish what you start is enormously not honoring. Sam and I both had experiences where we've canceled programs, we've shut down groups, we've refunded people and been like, listen, this would be out of integrity for me to keep doing this. And it's
absolutely
it's an honorable thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's this whole like self-love versus self-violence thing, you know? Being like, you know, it's like being self-violent. It's like putting myself in situations where I know is not conducive to the highest version of me, but I'm doing it to please other people, you know, or I'm doing it. And so, yeah, boundaries, boom. So like, how can I create a health? Oh, wait, one thing I actually want to touch on before I move on to just speaking about boundaries is, would you suggest then, or say that the being impulsive is coming from a place of fear, being intuitive is coming from a place of love, just to kind of tie that one in a box? Is that accurate, do you think?
I wouldn't tie it in a box. I would probably highly, yes. Intuition is always love, always wild soul. Yes.
Yeah.
The impulse and instinct also can be coming from higher intelligence though.
Got it. Cool.
You know what I mean? So I wouldn't, often it's fear, but sometimes fear is the higher intelligence. But the manufactured fear that's coming from like the thoughts in your mind that you're producing, that's the distinction I would make.
Got it. I love that. Okay, cool. So we talked about trusting ourselves. And so how then does trust and boundaries relate to each other? How can we create strong boundaries in order to trust ourselves more and build up more trust?
So here's one of the things that I think will really apply to your people specifically, because I know a lot of it is like body image, body love, and food oriented. We got to have boundaries with other people, but we have to have boundaries with ourselves because we teach other people how to treat us. So if we're constantly, you know, setting boundaries and intentions for our own selves, I'm not going to eat that. I know that's not good for me, or I'm really practicing self-love, or I'm going to check in with my intuition, you know, whatever is the thing, any intention, also there's a boundary there, because when you disregard it or when you don't do it, you've kind of broken your own promise. And a boundary is a promise, you know, or a commitment to your own self. So you really want to get consistent with your commitments to yourself. And then that will overlap into when you're honoring yourself, when you're committed to yourself, when you're following through with yourself, it becomes just part of the extension of the practice to do that with other people. And so where the trust comes in is this: not everyone around you is going to be practicing the same things.
Yeah. Most
other people don't trust themselves either. Most people are placing their power outside of themselves, their authority outside of themselves. And so when you start to do it, when you start to give those real, honest yeses and nos, you are going to offend some people. But like, you're not going to offend them. They're going to take offense. There's a difference. You actually can't offend someone. They can choose to take offense or not, right?
Yeah.
You can't hurt someone's feelings. They can choose to be hurt, you know?
Absolutely.
And sometimes you just are going to hurt someone's feelings because it's out of your control. But you need to honor yourself. So in my practice of boundaries, and like Sam will tell you, I'm one of the most boundary people. Like,
she is.
People tease me about it, and I'm like, that's fine. But like, who's the one who has energy all the time? Who's the one who feels good about herself, likes herself, and very rarely finds herself doing anything I don't want to do? That's me. And you're the one complaining about shit. So make fun of my boundaries if you want, but life is good over here in the wild soul world. So you have to trust above all things that the people who are meant for you, you cannot miss out on anything that's for you. You cannot miss out on people that are meant for you. And also remember, everything is cyclical. Everything happens in seasons and cycles and phases. So you might lose some relationships permanently. You might lose some just for a bit and circle back around. Like, it's amazing to me how I've had rifts in relationships and then circled back when people were like, oh man, I totally see why you made this choice. I took it super personally, or even me, like I've done that with other people as well, you know, or me choosing, I need to back away. I posted this hilarious GIF in, my Facebook group the other day. Do you remember Edward Scissorhands, or are you too young for that?
No, I got that.
So it said, you can't just cut people out of your life. And then it's a picture of Edward Scissorhands, like cutting with his scissor hands. And I'm like, damn, I'm like, that's me. And we go through phases where we might be a little more lax, and then we have to tighten it back up. I've been in a phase for the last several months of ruthless discernment. Yeah. I'm just a straight, absolutely, not even a little bit of compromise. And so the trust is this: every time you make that choice, every time you say no, because lots of times boundaries are about saying no to others or to things. Every time you're saying no to something that's not healthy for you or in your highest and best, you're saying yes to what is.
Yes. I love that. How can we identify the things that we need or get to create boundaries around?
I like to do this by looking at life in terms of various categories, right? Because it's all, we're dynamic beings. So I typically break it up into categories like health and body, which will include like your self-care, your nutrition, your movement practices, whatever. Spirituality or personal development, that's a separate category for me. For some people it might not be, or it might not even be a thing. Career. And by the way, if you're a mom, like you're a stay-at-home mom, that's your career. That is your meaningful life's work right there.
Yeah.
Money is separate from career, right? Your home environment is huge. As you know, you just moved into your place and you're like, oh my God, I'm finally rooted and grounded. This is my space. Makes a really big difference, especially for us as women to have our own space. Even if you share a home with other people, even if there's like a corner of the home that's your sacred space, we need our own space. We just need our own sacred space. Your lifestyle. So that might have to do with your travel or your preferences for like, you know, how you like to live or whatever. Your relationships, and under relationships, there's subcategories. If you have like immediate family, like your own kids or a partner, that'll be a category. Your family other than your own personal family, your friendships, your business, work relationships, whatever. So you look within and you notice, where do I feel the most drained? That's probably where you need some other freaking boundaries. Yeah. Because that's probably where you're saying a lot of yeses where you want to say no.
That's beautiful. I heard this quote. It's not mine, but you need to create boundaries around the things that you have anxiety around. Very similar to what you're saying, like feeling anxiety, feeling drained, feeling like, like if you think about that thing in your life and you're like, and it gives you that like lethargic, like heavy feeling, chances are there's probably a boundary that needs to be in place there.
Yeah, because like everything touches everything else. So if something's dragging you down in one area, it's affecting the other areas. Even the areas that seem to be thriving, they could be thriving so much more.
This is it. A lot of the women and the women that you work with high achievers, women who are kicking ass in so many areas of their lives. And in the case of my community, it's like they just can't figure out this food and body thing. In your community, it's a little bit different. But as soon as we understand how to heal that part of us, it up levels everything, and everything can be working at such a higher level. Because you're right, it's like this one thing is so over consuming in our mind and is taking us away from truly being present in the areas that are thriving and kicking ass. Yeah.
Totally. Like there's so many areas where we're tolerating shit that is not, like, there's no need for it. I posted this on Instagram the other day. I'm in Hawaii right now, and the first Airbnb where I was staying, there were all kinds of bugs. There were termites, there were ants, there were gnats. Like if I left anything in the sink, within 2 seconds, like swarm of gnats. And I'm like, I'm not spending 12 days here.
Yeah. No,
and I was trying to justify it. I'm like, well, I'm in the jungle. This is what it's like here, or whatever. Some people don't even have homes. I have a roof over my head. I'm like, oh, hell no. My wild soul, which is, I called my higher self, my wild soul, was like, hello, you don't do this anymore. And I was like, oh, you're right, girl. And I was like, found a different Airbnb, messaged that guy. I was like, refund me, whatever you can refund me. I'm out.
I love that. I love it. I love it. It's great. So I love the piece. So I went to one of Elizabeth's workshops a couple months ago, and you gave like a little tester of like the wild soul movement practice. And I felt so embodied and so sexy and so like so connected to myself, so connected to like that sensual, fiery, beautiful part of me. And I would love for you to just share a little bit more about Wild Soul Movement. And then we'll kind of let people know a little bit more about it and how they can get involved.
So Wild Soul Movement evolved from me being a personal trainer and like a very body oriented person. And realizing though the difference between paying attention to my body and actually listening to my body. And I first discovered what it was like to like listen to and like be in my body for real when I went to a pole dancing class many years ago in New York City, and the whole 30-minute warm up. 30 minutes. The New Yorker, like the native New Yorker of me, was like, all right, let's get the show on the road. When are we going to start learning the pole tricks?
Sounds like me too.
I was like, oh, damn, it felt so good. It was like so delicious. I could have stayed in there forever. It felt like so much, felt like 3 hours, and it was only 30 minutes. And it was so amazing and like nourishing, really nourishing. It's like the ways we feed our body with that don't even involve food or beverages or sleep or anything. So I got really curious how to incorporate that into a practice to stay connected on a more consistent basis. This also came at a time in my life when I was really exploring my femininity and like trying to understand what that even meant, because I had received a lot of feedback that I was really masculine or that I needed to soften. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So I was studying all kinds of like metaphysical things, energy work, spirituality, sensual movement. I'm reading books. I'm a huge nerd. Sam knows this about me. She stayed in my house. There's friggin' books everywhere. And I've read most of them and finished quite a few as well. But so Wild Soul Movement basically takes all of those elements. We use mantras so that, here's the deal. So many of you have tried like a seated stillness meditation. You're like, I can't get my mind to shut up. Here's the deal. Me neither. So that's what mantras are for. Your mind's going to work anyway. Might as well just direct it towards something that's going to benefit you and be useful. So we use mantras, and the sensual, it's slow movement and also intentional movement. So it's not always slow. Sometimes there's elements. We do a lot of like circling, a lot of non-linear movement, because a lot of the exercise a lot of us grew up doing and like have really punished ourselves with linear. Right? If you're familiar with the planes of movement, there's like 3 planes: sagittal, frontal, and the horizontal plane. It's all in there. So non-linear movement means we're like moving in and out of all different types of planes: body rolls, shoulder rolls, hip rolls, like really laying down, standing up, like noticing how we feel and how different things work for us, learning how to honor your body in that way while repeating the mantra. So the movement is kind of like a physical expression of the words. So it's kind of like, it's just so effective as a moving meditation and a healing practice, because things will just come up. You'll learn to notice them. You'll feel them. Sometimes it could just, you feel it and let it pass. So it's like, it's physical, it's mental, emotional, it's metaphysical. And, you know, the Virgo in me loves, it's so efficient. It's so efficient. What people might try to achieve going to yoga, which is also still very masculine because there's an instructor like telling you what to do. Wild Style Movement is a lot more of an invitation where I'm like guiding you, but also going, hey, if something else would feel better right now,
Yes.
try that.
Oh, I love this. I love this. It's amazing what we can uncover just below the surface with a little bit of movement.
Yeah.
It's incredible. When we move intentionally, it's like there's shit right underneath the surface that just like comes out. And it's like, it's like you're like purging things that do not belong to you through movements. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Totally.
So for those of you who are as excited as we are about this, as we're like moving and touching our breasts, for those of you listening, you can head over to www.wildsoulmovement.com/Sam. It will be in the show notes. And what we're going to do as well is on July the 19th, 2017. That's what year we're in, right?
Yes.
We are going to be doing a Q&A live, Facebook Live in the Hungry for Happiness Global Community Group. So for those of you who are not yet in that group, go get your bums in there and put a calendar. What am I trying to say? A calendar reminder. There we go. I was like, where's the word? Where's the word?
I do that all the time. I get so excited. I'm like, what was the next word coming out of my mouth?
So we are going to be kicking that off on July the 19th at 10 a.m. PST. Elizabeth and I are going to be doing a Facebook Live inside the group, asking any questions about Wild Soul Movement, anything that we talked about on this podcast. If you want clarity or if you want anything else, please hop on. It's going to be a party. We're going to have a lot of fun on there. So www.hungryforhappiness.com/Facebook. You can join the group there. This was super energizing for me. It's always super energizing hanging out with you, girl. I miss you. Come back to me.
I know. I'll see you in like a month. What the hell?
I know. Seriously. And this, I know we're going to have you back on the show. I know we are, because my community is going to absolutely love you. So for those of you who loved this episode, go pop that in your calendar, and we will see you inside the Facebook group on July the 19th. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Can I share one special thing?
Yes, you can share one special thing.
I will. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but when we do that Facebook Live inside your group, I'll do just like a short, like a 3 to 5 minute kind of like wild movement-ish practice.
Ooh, I like.
So wild soul movement, so people could like kind of get the feel and get the experience of what all these things we just talked about. I'm all about the felt, real, lived experience. So we'll do that in the beginning of that as well.
Oh yes, I love. Okay, perfect.
All right, cool. Bye, y'all. Thank you so much.
We'll see you on the 19th of July. See you later.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode on the Hungry for Happiness podcast. You can join the conversation with women just like yourself at hungryonfacebook.com. Until next week, ladies, stay classy and badass.